The wind swept across the old highway rest stop at dusk, and the fading light cast long shadows that stretched across the cracked pavement. A little girl stood near the vending machines with her arms wrapped tightly around herself, and her small body trembled in a way that almost blended into the cold evening breeze. People passed by in a blur of motion and distraction, and none of them paid attention to her silent plea for help. Yet her fear pulsed through the air with a weight so heavy that it seemed impossible for anyone with a heart to miss it. She lifted her hand in a tiny hidden gesture, meant to signal danger, meant to ask for safety and hope. The gesture lasted only a moment, but it carried the strength of a child who had endured far more than she ever should have. No one around her noticed that subtle motion at all, but inside a police K9 van parked across the lot, 14 trained dogs sat at attention, and every single one lifted its head at the exact same second. If you believe in kindness and the power of second chances, please like, share, comment, and subscribe to support stories that remind us of the courage hidden inside the smallest hearts. The girl named Mara was only 8 years old, but her eyes held a depth of exhaustion found only in those who had known fear for far too long. She wore an oversized coat that hung awkwardly on her frame and swallowed her small shape entirely. The coat did not belong to her, and the weight of it pressed against her shoulders like a reminder of the man who dragged her along the highway before stopping here. The man who stood behind her towered over her with a stillness that masked a dangerous anger. His expression looked calm to anyone passing by, but Mara felt the cold threat behind his silence. She had been warned again and again to keep quiet, to never signal for help, to never trust anyone but him. Yet her heart still carried the faint glow of hope, and it pushed her to make that hidden signal with a hand that trembled. Inside the K9 training van, the dogs let out a low, restless rumble. They were trained to detect stress, fear, distress, and danger long before human eyes recognized it. Sergeant Delaney sat near them, sipping a lukewarm drink and reviewing notes from their training session earlier. His dogs rarely reacted without a cause, and never all at once. When he saw their bodies suddenly tense, their ears pointed toward the vending machines, he knew something was wrong. He followed their gaze and saw only a man and a young girl standing quietly. Nothing obvious, nothing loud, nothing that screamed trouble to an ordinary mind. But 14 dogs had sensed something that cut through the surface image. Mara kept her eyes down as the man behind her adjusted his grip on her arm ever so slightly. She felt the sting of pressure and the unspoken threat pulse through her. She remembered the poster she once saw at school showing children how to signal for help silently. Her thumb tucked into her palm and her fingers curled over it, and she prayed someone would see. She lifted her hand again for only an instant, and even though no human noticed her silent cry, the dogs did. They pressed forward with sudden intensity, and their bodies became rigid with purpose. Sergeant Delaney trusted his dogs more than he trusted any instinct he had ever developed on his own. He grabbed his radio and called 2 officers who were inside the rest stop cafe, telling them he sensed a problem, even though he could not yet explain it. Something in the air felt wrong, and the dogs told him everything he needed to know. The officers walked out in a calm, casual manner, blending into the natural movement of travelers heading back to their vehicles. They scanned the lot with trained eyes until they spotted the girl. Officer Hale noticed the faint discoloration on her arm, the way she kept her body tense, and the quick movement of her fingers forming that silent signal. He recognized it instantly. The officers approached slowly with gentle voices, and Mara felt her chest tighten with fear. The man standing beside her stiffened suddenly, and she knew he was angry. She braced herself for the moment he would lean close and whisper a threat. But before he could act, the air erupted with sharp barks from the police dogs in the van. Their voices cut through the quiet evening like an alarm bell meant to shatter danger. The men jumped at the sound, and the officers closed in with controlled precision. What followed happened in a blur for Mara. The officers asked questions that the man answered with stumbling uncertainty. His story fell apart with each passing second, and the blood drained from his face as he realized the situation slipping from his grasp. Mara stood still, afraid to move, afraid to breathe, afraid that if she spoke the wrong word, everything would collapse. But she did not need to say anything. Her silence, her trembling, her bruises, and her signal spoke louder than words. Soon the man was handcuffed and led to a patrol car, while Mara stood surrounded by officers and dogs who gave her space yet formed a protective circle. She looked at the dogs and saw a softness in their intense eyes. One sable-colored shepherd stepped forward, as if sensing the fragile hope rising in her. She reached out and gently touched the top of his head. His warm presence made her lungs release a breath she did not know she had been holding. The officers placed a blanket around her shoulders and invited her into the warmth of the police van. They gave her a small cup of hot chocolate and waited patiently until she steadied. They did not push her for a statement. They let her breathe. They let her feel safe. Delaney sat across from her and told her softly that his dogs were trained to detect distress, but he had never seen them react so strongly all at the same moment. He told her they saved lives every day, but today they saved hers. Those words broke open everything she had been holding inside. Tears spilled down her cheeks, and she buried her face in her hands. Her small body shook with emotion, and the officers waited with quiet compassion. She was safe. She was seen. She was no longer alone. Hours later, a social worker arrived and told her that her mother had reported her missing and had been praying for her return. The thought of her mother flooded Mara with relief so powerful she felt dizzy. She had hoped she would see her mother again, but hope had felt impossible. Now that dream was coming true. When Mara arrived at the police station, her mother rushed toward her with open arms and tears streaming down her face. Mara ran into her embrace and felt warmth and love surrounding her fully. She clung to her mother as if she feared she might vanish if she let go. The reunion filled the police station with an emotional weight that settled warmly over everyone who witnessed it. Later that evening, Mara asked if she could see the dogs once more. Delaney brought them out one by one, and Mara hugged each of them gently. She whispered soft words of gratitude and love to them, and each dog responded with a gentle nuzzle or steady gaze. These dogs became her silent protectors, her unexpected heroes, the ones who heard her quiet cry for help. Months passed and Mara slowly healed as she returned to school, therapy, and normal life. She drew pictures of the dogs often and kept them in a small notebook that she brought everywhere. She visited the K9 unit regularly, and each time she walked in, her smile grew a little brighter and her steps a little steadier. She knew that dark moments did not define her. She knew heroes existed in unexpected forms. She knew that brave hearts came in both human and canine bodies. Her life became a reminder that even in the quietest signal, there can be a powerful call for help. And even when people fail to see what is right in front of them, there are guardians who listen with sharper senses and deeper intuition. 14 police dogs had answered her silent plea and changed her life forever. If this story touched your heart, please like, comment, share, and subscribe so more people can feel the power of courage, hope, and compassion. Before you go, please comment, "I believe in heroes, both human and animal."